Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the IDEG House, the Institute for Democratic Governance, here at East England and Accra. My name is Patrick Oakham, and I'm going to be your MC for just about 5 minutes, because as soon as the chair for the occasion takes over, my work will be done. We invited you over this morning for a public conversation on strengthening democratic development through multi-party-based local government. And we're going to have our experts from in-house, from South Africa, and from Kenya to speak to the issues and share experiences in their respective countries. I think that we're all grateful to the Almighty God for giving us another day. And we cannot start without Him. And so I'd like to start with an opening prayer. And it is my privilege and my pleasure to invite a senior pastor of Calvary Baptist Church, who is also a member of the steering committee of the Civic Forum Initiative, in the person of Reverend Fred Igwe, to give us the opening prayer. Could you please be up, standing, as we take the opening prayer?
So thank you for your goodness to us. We are up because of your grace and your mercy. And we gathered it here for this communication. We gathered in your name. We ask that all we see to bring enhancement to our lives, especially our lives, and we can be affect our glory. We ask all this in Christ our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Fred. May I also remind you that this program is being broadcast live on Star FM, Star 103.5 FM. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this public conversation is a collaboration of the Institute for Democratic Governance and the Civic Forum Initiative, and it's funded by USA, UNDP, IBIS, and StarCap. And our media partners are the Daily Graphic, Unique FM, and Star 103.5 FM. For a program of this magnitude, it's always important to have a chair. And as I indicated earlier, the chair will be taking over from me and will be moderating to the very end of the program. And we thought that it will be useful to find somebody beautiful and wonderful who has a lot of credibility with regards to her profile. And to introduce her, we have the Communications Officer from IDEG in the person of Yvonne Watson.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to be introducing our chair for this morning's program. She is a Christian lawyer and the executive director of the Foundation, a women's human rights NGO in Ghana, West Africa. The foundation established the first shelter for battered women in Ghana in 1999. She holds a Bachelor of Laws LLB degree from the University of Ghana and was called to the Ghana Bar as a barrister and solicitor in 1989. She also received a Master's in Law LLM degree from the Georgetown University Law Center, Washington, D.C., USA, in 1995. and a Master of Arts MA degree in Theology in 2006, and a Master's of Theology PhD in 2013 from the Akofi Pistola Institute for Theology, Mission and Culture in Ghana, where she is currently pursuing a PhD in theology. She has won a number of prestigious national awards in her work that promotes women's rights and empowerment, including being an awardee of the Millennium Excellence Award in 2010 and the Martin Luther King Jr. Award for Social Justice in 2009. Her strong interest and passion are young women's leadership development, working with survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, women's mental health research and advocacy, and Christian discipleship and mentoring. She is married to Pani Donna Abwaji, who works in the UN in South Sudan. They have 3 girls and a boy, all grown up, and I must add that she is the mother of a few days old bride. Congratulations. I give you Mrs. Angela Donna Abwaji. Let's welcome her with a round of applause. Good morning, everyone. I woke up late. I've been having a wedding for a few days. It's been exciting, but it also tells me that while we're enjoying the serious issues that need to be considered in our country, and the only reason why we continue to have fun we have and all the joy, making and all that is because there's a certain level of peace that needs to be sustained and maintained. And so when Mr. invited me to chair this function, I had nothing to say to him but yes. Actually, it doesn't give you a choice when he asks you to do something for him. And I'm sure many of you know him for that. The topic for today is an interesting one. First, because it contains many words: strengthening, democratic, development, multi-party, based local government. And we're looking at South Africa, Kenya, and Uganda. Now, who will get excited by a topic like this? Every one of those words, apart from countries, every one of those words are very, very, very important. And we know that whether we're talking about pro-poor as against poverty, gender, disability and ability, spatial development, it starts at the base. That's where we want it to start. That's where we want to go. And so it's with great joy that I say thank you and accept to chair this function, which is going to be a conversation. A conversation because we don't want to hear really powerful speakers go on and on for an hour each, but we actually want to hear what they're thinking, what their thoughts are about strengthening democratic development at the base of governance for 15 minutes each, and then we'll invite all of us to join in the conversation. Is that okay? Yes, I think that's very okay. So I say thank you, IDEG, thank you, CFI, thank you, Dr. Apiti, for inviting me to chair this very auspicious function. At this time, there's supposed to be a documentary. Are we ready to go? The documentary, why I introduce the guest. Oh, on Dr. Apiti. A long-standing friend of mine. We go way, way, way back to those days in Ghana United Nations Students Association. At that time, he didn't speak much, but he was full of ideas. Now he talks a lot. And I am hopeful he's still full of ideas. He does not stop working for this country. And I'm very privileged to invite him. He's the executive director of IDEG and also the one who steers the affairs of the Civic Forum Initiative. It's with a great pleasure that I invite my friend, Dr. Emmanuel Apiti.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. I can't tell you how happy I am that we have this hall virtually filled to capacity. When we discussed having this event on Monday, my staff said to me that, Doc, Monday is a busy day for everybody. We didn't include last year. Why not Tuesday? And I said that, well, let's try it. Fortunately, I was told that SAR was just covering live, so I said to them that we solved the problem. We can have an empty room, and so everybody was able to be safe. But little did I expect that in this hall, we would have the best of minds, making time for this morning's event, and we're so grateful to you. I think the Lord said, loud on I have seen Professor Kumado with us. I haven't seen him for a while. I think we go invited him, but he said he saw the invitation and he said, let me go because it's possible it's when I'm invited as well. So we are so grateful. Shall we welcome him? I know that the Deputy Chair of the National Development Planning Commission, Dr. Esofa, who we've worked with for a long time. You know, recently the director of the Institute of Local Government Service, she's here with us too. I can see Professor Greenstreet. She's always with us, but when she comes here, she's not alone. She comes also as the institution called CODEO. You know CODEO, Coalition of Domestic Election Observers. But she is also been very active on Pan-African issues through the African Peer Review Mechanism, Governing Council in Ghana. So she goes a long way. And I'm told that this is one of the areas of passion for her as a scholar. So the difficult questions to be asked, please, I'm not the one to answer. So I'm comfortable with her being here. Let's welcome her. So, okay. We've seen Reverend David. We've seen Reverend will be praying for us, but we have our partners also here. I can see Star Ghana will be represented by the head of the programs. Please, shall we see the word? Thank you. It's not very Latin, so they're here. And I also see our EU colleagues. Star Ghana has UK aid and European Union as supporters, and they also will be represented here. Thank you, gentlemen, for working hard and believing in what we do. We have IBIS. They've supported us since 2002. Anytime we go to them, they respond. And they also come in when we've not asked. So we are grateful that Danny is here representing you. Thank you very much. In this hall as well, you know, I get my job from the IDEG Government Council, and we are ably represented here by Professor Prof. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. So you can always say I deserve another chair, based on my performance, of course. Yes. We have the head of the law faculty, Professor Pashiga Pashiga is here. And then I will go on, but I'll mention only two and all of them, so we can move on quickly. Ambassador Chega of CDB is here. We work with him so closely. We're always talking and finding ways of collaboration. I'm so happy he's here. In this room as well, we have other members of the steering committee. We have General Coleman, who chairs the CFI, the Civic Forum. And we do have the head of the African Diplomatic Corps, Her Excellency Mrs. Calvin Saka, with us. Please let's welcome her with a very loud round of applause. There is no event we invited, she wouldn't come to support us and inspire us to our experiences. Please, if I haven't mentioned your name, it's not so deliberate, but it's smooth one. So I recognize that you are all excellencies, CFI, steering members, and members, and all that. My duty here is a simple one. How could we, at a time like this when we're so focused on campaigns and invectives and all that is happening, also draw the nation's attention to some of the important things that ought to be considered also in campaign periods like this. The Institute, since 2010, has been drawing attention to the fact that our democratic system is important to us. We've achieved a lot with it, and a lot more can be achieved. But we shouldn't take it for granted. It needs to strengthen in very important ways to continue doing the work it is helping us do. Last week, the Economist magazine, which focused on democracy in Africa, mentioned Ghana together with 4 other countries as the leading democratic countries in Africa, and it had a certain high class on that. It is about the 3rd time this year I've seen Ghana referred to. And what I've experienced is that when I meet the people who rate us so highly in international conferences, and we are talking about, they're very curious about Ghana, and I'm telling them about some of the challenges they want to hear. Sometimes they are not interested. They just think Ghana, if you put Ghana in the bigger context of Africa, then, Ghana is doing well, and so on. So it is good that we've made progress for a country that couldn't hold multi-party systems and elected government for more than 27 months, and 24 years or so. I think we can do a lot more, but we also must admit to ourselves, even if our foreign friends and partners do not see the weaknesses we talk about, except those who live here with us, it is our responsibility to tell them what the weaknesses are and how we can solve them. And so we have been looking at how to strengthen our democratic system. For us, democratic development simply means development that is rights-based and human-centered. And we think that we thought we couldn't do that within a multi-party movement. But in the last 24 years, if you look at the indicators, international assessment and so on, we are making progress, significant progress, than we probably did in the non-democratic systems we have. Yet, when people feel a bit frustrated with this democratic system because they think public services are not being delivered as they should, the quality is poor, people talk about corruption, no accountability, they see our parties doing holy elections, and now everybody's scared about what will happen because of the conduct of the parties in elections, especially our 2 giant parties we call the coalition parties, NPP and NDC. They think the alternative would be a system that cannot assure us of good education, good quality education, healthcare, transport, jobs, homes, and even security should be changed. We disagree. We think that changed to what and for what. We've heard that there are issues to do with fear of violence in our elections. We've heard that there are guns flying in and out, the police are discovering them, and there's a lot of anxiety. We've heard about militias, the parties, and strongmen in parties having militias and so on. I think for us, these are not insurmountable problems within the democratic system. We think our police ought to do their work and tackle this for us. But they do not necessarily strengthen our system. They suggest to us that this system is not satisfying the needs or meeting the needs of many, and we have to look at a way of doing that. Therefore, in our thinking, we felt that the most strategic thing to do in this election is to remind our leaders that local government reform is crucial to strengthening our democratic system. It's unusual to argue that the turbulence in our politics could end with a reform of the local government system, opening it up to political parties to participate. And sometimes when we say this, people ask us, what kind of political parties are you talking about? Are we not going to polarize the system further by having these 2 parties controlling all the districts. And we say, well, it could be, but the democracy is work in progress and is a process. The voters will change the situation as we go along. We also think that we need so profound will this reform be that it will change the politics and the structure of politics of the country. It's not a creed, it's not a belief, but it seems to us that the executive arm of government has never been a place that opposition and elected parties govern. They are in parliament, but not the executive arm of government. But if we open up the system and the electorate decide small parties and big parties are represented and they are controlling a number of districts and they have to work with the president, we're going to see a different kind of politics. Probably that will shift us more towards development and it will have a positive impact on strengthening our institutions. So these are some of the ideas we hold. We are not campaigning for these reforms to be fixed now, but we think that we have evidence to show that there is a growing convergence on the need to reform local government, what we call democratic revolution. Open it up to the parties, give more powers to the local authorities, revenues, we should look at the allocation, they should have power to pursue their development programs, all within a national framework, which I believe NDPC will be busy to put together, also within the framework of the 40-year plan they're working on. So this is what inspires us, because we think it will bring about some change, and we begin to see that development is rather at the heart of our politics, democratic politics, and not elections and individuals coming to government, probably with a different agenda than accelerating the development of the country. The crucial thing for us then is we've raised this issue now because we think it's a public policy issue. It's about not only changing policies, but also ultimately the law and probably the constitution. It cannot be done this period, but this is the picture we have. We've talked to all the parties, small and the two giants, and they're all drifting towards opening up the system of local government parties to participate, but they don't know how. They haven't had the time to think through how this is going to be. And we think as a think tank, it is also our responsibility then to complement that move. In 2015, NCCE published a survey they did asking Ghanaians whether they want local government, they want elections in local government. We still elect our local leaders, assembly members at least 2/3, but it's not based on parties. So anytime I hear electing DCEs and so on, I think that we want the parties to now they say that about 69%, probably 70% of those want to see elections now. The data we have shows that presidential elections and parliamentary elections have high turnout, averaging about 80%. The last 2 years, probably 75%. And that tells us that Ghanaians are not afraid of parties. They actually get involved in the president and parliamentarians. And they like the parties around, but they are not able to influence much of what they do. When you compare that to local government, it's usually 30%. Except that until last year's election, we were able to get about 40%. But they still have the 40%. So as we look at this year, it tells us that there is a strong. Hello, I'm not mistaken. I can use it. Okay. So as we look at this year, it tells us that there is a basis on which we can all begin to discuss how to reform the democratic system, especially in the executive arm of government, to strengthen our democracy. All that we are seeking to do is to encourage all of us to make this also an important issue. It's not only schools, roads, dams, mention them, but at the end of the day, peace and stability is fundamental to how much more we can achieve. And we think that we must talk about what will strengthen the democratic system as a whole. In the discussions that will follow, I'm sure my colleagues will give the details. All we want today is put this issue, make this one of the issues we are discussing between now and elections. We are going to go to the regions to continue this conversation because we think it's probably the most strategic thing we should also get our politicians to speak more about. They are not doing that yet. But if we can get their commitment, even if it's said on various platforms, that after the elections, we are going to look seriously at local government reform, the district assemblies, and how they could be opened up, how we could make them more effective to deliver the democratic dividends. That would be great. And that is always in at this stage. But we think if they commit, we would also like to work with them. We are hoping that at least by the next election 2023, we would have seen some reform that assures everybody that the challenges of the democratic system can be faced. Ghana doesn't have a multi-party local government. Kenya and South Africa do. They are different systems, different histories, but we thought that we could gain some insights, their experiences would be instructive to us in ways that could still inform our conversations of what to do. When it comes to political parties, I teach my Kenyan colleague that, we have real parties that Kenya has. The parties we have a long history. They have ideologies behind them. You can debate that, but we can trace them back in history, and we don't form coalitions. Individual parties are strong enough to govern. In Kenya, they do a lot of coalitions, and they also like buying and selling their parties. They can form one at a time, and so on. So it's a business-like party if they are. And then you go to South Africa, you have a situation where they are behaving like CPP. But we finished the CPP time in the 60s. But yet ANC is a dominant party, hegemonic in many ways, but they're also beginning, yet they allow most of them ability and government for the party. They don't collapse. They are not something what can we learn from them? Kenya is dealing with recession problems, 10 years but they are also very, very, engaged while they progress their ability. We can learn from them. As compared to South Africa, that's in 1994, has opened up the system. And recently they've had elections and told that all the other urban centers, Johannesburg, Victoria, and others have been taken over from them. But South Africans are not saying that democracy has collapsed and they are going to buy the constitution. So these are some of the arguments. So we think we want to enlighten this conversation, and if what we learn from them here will help us also engagement and to enrich that conversation. Because our democratic system needs strength. CDB data, Afrobarometer, shows that support for the democratic system is sharply on the decline. Every single institution. So we need to also do what we must do. People are losing confidence because all the talk about reforms, constitutional amendments, and so on, they haven't seen it materialize. And these are some of the things that we need to look at as an institution, research and advocacy. We must look at critical issues that will affect democracy and that. So I'm happy you come here to join us. The conversation, they will make some issues that are sent to us and we can provide them. I think we can go with that. Thank you very much. Yes. Democratic means of these people
democratic governments to function at that time. When you come to get Ghana to elect its officials at the district level through competitive multi-party politics, what will it take to bring that change about? The current local government system was first introduced in 1987. That's when the district assemblies came to be at the local level. It was meant over time to increase self-rule for districts. We began with deconcentration, where executive power was ceded through delegation. The ultimate goal was devolution, where the country's 216 districts would be autonomous from central power.
They are not completely independent. We depend still on central government for a whole lot, but they have scopes where they make decisions on their own and determine or define their priorities, development priorities.
When a central government takes a decision that some decisions concerning localities are just too important for me to take, therefore, I will transfer power and resources to the people living in the area to take those decisions and apply those resources themselves to solve their problems. That is devolution.
In reality, though, power continues to be on the central bank, and it's exclusive only to the holders of power. In other words, the winner of the election. This situation is further aggravated by the powers granted the executive president under our constitution.
The way we design a system, which is what people have rightly described as winner takes all, because it's the president who appoints everybody. You know, it's local government, in this executive sphere of government, distinct from the legislature or parliament, the president controls everything. At the moment, we have 216 districts, of course, including municipal and metropolitan, and they are not elected. So that's the how of winner takes all.
I asked IDEG's procedure what was wrong with the winner takes all system.
Sometimes the party that wins the presidency won by just a significant percentage when the winner of the election obtained only 41,000 votes more than the loser of the election. How can you use such a small proportion of votes to take control of every single unit of the country? No, it is not fair.
And yet there are those who argue that inclusive government already exists. In Parliament, Dr. Nanakwete has a different view.
You can accommodate democratically, create a basis for participation in government, only in parliament. You can. And even the numbers tend to undermine, the inclusiveness of what happens in parliament. So you have a force outside that is greedy. It says, well, I have nothing to do with executive arm. I can get into local government, where in all democracies, local government is open to political parties to compete.
Let me give you the example of Kenya. Odinga lost the presidential election to Uhuru Kenyatta, but Odinga's party controls half of the 47 counties, and they are managing the resources perfectly in these 50% of the counties in Kenya. So, when you devote power, there is no business of winner takes all. You may win the presidential election, and if you're not lucky, you may not win even the majority of devolved governments in the country.
The problem with one side mobilizing all power is that political elections become a do or die affair, and in some cases this has led to violence. Dr. Tupac, a constitutional law expert at the Faculty of Law of the University of Ghana, describes how desperate politicians are to hold on to power.
After we have lost power, we are nothing. And if we are nothing, then who are we until the next 4 years? That feeling of emptiness, And remember, in this country, politics is like an investment. People give huge sums of money hoping that they will win power in court. So if they lose power, then there's this feeling that, I've lost everything.
And so politicians fight tooth and nail to retain political power, even at the risk of political instability.
You can tell the template. If you compare probably elections in 1996, probably 2004 to now, you find out that increasingly people are getting anxious. There is real fear, palpable fear.
I decided to visit the Ghana Peace Council to determine whether the risk of election-related violence was really realistic. Reverend Sunday, I know that you are with the Ghana Peace Council and are quite concerned about possible outbreaks of violence in the election. How serious is it?
I can see that 2016 we are in for it, in the sense that the stakes are very, very high. The trust when it comes to the functions of the institution that is to referee the electoral commission is very, very low.
Is the threat of violence exaggerated?
I would rather have somebody who will be warning us and telling us to be very careful and to ensure that we do not allow violence to occur than somebody who tells us sort of there's nothing, we are peaceful. And I don't think that we have to exaggerate this attack.
You never know. You've been involved in the Peace Council for a while. You're worried, aren't you?
I love my country. You know, I always say that what is it that we are looking for when we are vying for power? It is power to what? And I keep asking people, what are you voting for? You are voting for the development of Ghana. You are voting to ensure that our nation moves forward. I mean, I watch Al Jazeera and other places showing us what is happening in other countries. Mighty structures within seconds are blown away.
Kenya, in 2007, after just one election, with more than 1,000, almost 3,700 people were killed. But before this election, Kenya was considered to be one of the most peaceful, most stable countries in Africa. The same thing applies to Cote d'Ivoire.
Well, clearly the issue of peace or violence in like election is not something that it's quite clear that there's been a increasing threat, and unless we make a special effort to work on it, that is not threatening the whole democracy. And perhaps we have no real democracy when multi-party elections are not allowed at the district level.
If we are going to elect people to be chief executives or mayors, we have a multi-party system. Let the parties contest.
When you develop power and you allow other parties to contest in all these localities for power, what you get is that a party may lose a presidential election. A party may not get a majority in parliament, but it may be running the affairs of so many district councils, district assemblies, and so on and so forth.
That is how you have a more inclusive government. That is how you shift them from doing the things that will even distract you as a government. Your policies will not be shaped by the need to win elections alone. Your policies will be shaped by the needs of the people and the long-term vision you have to transform a country and its economy.
Dr. Akwete explains it further.
If you open it up to elections, the electorate is going to redistribute the 260 districts, municipalities, and metropolises amongst the parties. Initially, the major parties are going to take the chunk of it, and with time, you find out that voters will shift. The important determinant will not be ethnicity or NDC, but your delivery, your development performance.
The issue of opening up elections at the local level is nothing new. But clearly, political parties have been hesitant in the past to implement it when in government.
In 2000, NDC did not appear to be so much in favor of elections. In 2008, they made some pronouncement. In 2012, they went further. This is the idea of they're going to increase the number of nominees, the Public Services Commission will shortlist and people elect. But they were still not going to put it on the party platform. NDP was a big thing, half the president who fought on it anyway. They just left it there. If you look at 2008 and 12, they were not so clear on what they did. Come 2016, with almost all the parties now saying that we should open up local government to the political parties, our people know political parties, and they are participating in political parties' elections.
So why don't we just go ahead and do it?
Political parties are not allowed to participate in local government. It's in the constitution. So you have to go there and change it. Whether it will be due there or whether it will be by referendum, it is an issue that the politicians must agree it is in the interest of the country. So they will do it. If they did that, It will not, it will go through and it can be implemented.
This amendment is very necessary and enable all the parties, not just the big bodies, but all the parties effectively participate in running our decentralized local government system. What are you doing to ensure this happens? IDEG has, since 2014, been organizing a national campaign, very strong advocacy for this change. And this year, in fact, only last year, we went around again talking to influential politicians, institutions, and so on and so forth. This year, we are going to engage in the same campaign in the hope that after the election, very vital decisions may be taken in this direction. To get another perspective on the issue of electing DC and the concept of power sharing, I went to Parliament to speak to the MP for Sunyani East, Kwesi Amenoche, who has spent 30 years working in local government.
Personally, I am in support of the election of district executives. It's been my opinion for quite some time now. It's all about accountability. In most of the African countries, maybe Ghana is gradually becoming the exception where we appoint district executives. I think the time has come for us to give a second thought to it. I don't agree with the reason people normally cite that Ghana is a growing democracy. We consider ourselves to be the beacon of democracy, the star of Africa, and all that. You go to some other countries, I'm not demeaning any other country in Africa. They just came out of wars. Liberia, Sierra Leone, all those countries elect their chief executive on partisan lines.
I spoke with Dr. Tupac to find out what steps are needed to change the constitutional position of the matter.
Taking that is an entrenched profession. We will require that the bill which we is being proposed by the Constitutional Review Commission through the Constitutional Review Commission has been submitted to the Speaker of Parliament, has been referred to Council for his advice, is back to Parliament. First reading, after first reading, it's been submitted to a national referendum. Then from that, at the national referendum, we are expected to have 40% of the registered voters voting, and then 75% of them voting in favor of such an amendment.
If this was to happen, the political landscape in Ghana would change significantly.
Politics will change. It is not going to be putting your party supporter who can do a job, but he's your party member. This philosophy that I can't work with somebody from a different, who's not from my party, in the executive of the, it will change many things. It will change many things. So it's the most strategic thing to do now.
That's a good document. David, nice to see you. That's him. Who was speaking? Yeah, very good document. My head is swimming. The goal is clear, but my head is swimming because there are many processes. I've been in advocacy long enough to know that you can't do 3 things and achieve your goal. It's a series of processes. We have a desired goal, Trump winner takes it all. And as part of trumping that winner takes it all is to reform local government. And we need to get to that desired goal. And it involves many processes. And we want you to be part of this process. And that's why I'm happy to introduce somebody I've known for a long time. A number of my lecturers are here, so I should be very long time in many capacities. He's a donor. He's a senior research fellow with the Institute of Democratic Governance here. He's a political science lecturer, former head of the political science department,
of the University of Ghana. He is also been a visiting scholar to the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, and the University of California at Los Angeles. He graduated from the University of Ghana in 1975, when I was about to form one, with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science, with history. Over the years, Dr. Jonah has worked and provided expertise on democracy and governance in Ghana, and in Africa, and in the world. If anybody has talked to me about democracy in Africa, it's me, Dr. Jonah. I've learned so much from him. He has published several publications, including conference and seminar papers, and participated in several conferences. He's also a constant panel member on many discussions in this country. He has special expertise in the design and implementation of election research and the design and implementation of election monitoring programs, among others. He's also a member of the African Association for Political Science. Shall we give him a round of applause? Yeah, you have 15 minutes to share your thoughts. We'll come back to you.
Thank you so very much, Angela. I have only 15 minutes, but it still really stopped me from paying attention to some kind of feeling that I got when I entered the room. When I came here, I felt very confident that I could make my presentation without shaking. So, and then my executive director, Dr. Makwate, decided to drop some very big names. Professor so, this subject is a passion, and so on and so forth. Then I began to shake. Because you know, the good old joke, a gentleman died and found himself at the gate of heaven, where he met St. Peter. And then Peter told me, the Lord Almighty has stopped giving free admission to heaven to all good people. Before you take your seat in heaven, you must do a presentation. So give me your topic now. Then the gentleman wrote flood, because he died through flood. Peter shook his head, and the gentleman asked, anything wrong with my topic? He said, no. Very good topic, but I just want to remind you that no one is family will be in the audience. So, there are so many knowers there are so many knowers in this room on this subject, and so that's why I am a bit shaky. But distinguished Madam Chair, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have done so much about this subject. The only thing I want to do today is not to give a very long presentation, but just to tell you what IDEG's position on this subject is, and to state the details. What is it that IDEG wants? It's nearly 3 decades since Ghana adopted our present system of decentralized government, which was intended to bring development and democracy closer to the people. Within this span of time, the system has gone through a tremendous expansion that has resulted in almost 100% increase in the number of basic structures from 110 to 216. You will recall that when we introduced the system under our present constitution, we had only 110 districts. We have expanded and expanded and expanded. We are 216 now, and we are still counting. But since the introduction of the system, service delivery in the districts has improved substantially. Local economic development has been sustained, and local level democracy given a new lease of life. In brief, within this past generation, the system of decentralized government has in many ways served this nation very, very well. There's absolutely no doubt about its achievements. But after many years of operating the system, it has become perfectly clear that the system, as it exists now, was carefully crafted to serve the purpose of the military regime that brought it into existence. Indeed, it was not engineered to support and promote an inclusive, multi-party, democratic political system. Now, accountability mechanisms are weak. Participation is very restrictive and exclusionary. Politics has been entrenched. It is no wonder, therefore, that many public-spirited Ghanaians have raised their voices loud and clear against the continued retention of the system and called for urgent action to reform it in a way that will render it fit for purpose in a vibrant, multi-party democratic system. Ghana's current local government system comprises of an apex body at the regional level called the Regional Coordinating Council. Below the Regional Coordinating Council, the RCC, are the basic structures of the local government system, namely the metropolitan, the municipal, and the district assembly, each of which also terminates at the unit committee level, which is at the bottom. In between the RCC and the unit committee, of course, there are all these layers: the metropolitan, the municipal, the district assembly, as well as substructures. Many of them are they differ depending on whether you are talking about the metropolitan, the municipal, or a district assembly. But regardless of the name given to the basic unit, the function it performs is almost the same. And whether we call it a metropolitan, a municipal, or a district assembly also depends on the population. For a metropolitan area, you need 250,000. For a municipal area, you need 95,000. And for a district assembly, you need 75,000 people to constitute a district assembly. Now, regardless of the name given, the functions they perform are more or less the same. Two key functions stated in the Constitution. First, each of them is in charge of the formulation and execution of plans, programs, and strategies for the effective mobilization of resources necessary for the development of the jurisdictional area. And second, levying and collection of taxes, rates, duties, and fees for development. Now, within the severe constraints imposed by the inadequate and most often untimely delivery of financial resources, the assemblies have not performed badly at all. Now, so let us look at the persistent calls for change. Leading politicians, political parties, civil society organizations like IDEG, and prominent Ghanaians have all raised their voices for reform of the system, claiming that in its present form, the system has outlived its usefulness. A consolidated local government bill, which is now before Parliament, has introduced some very minor changes to the way in which the system should operate, but fundamentally, the system remains intact. This immediately leads us to the question: why are people crying for a reform of the system? The main cause of popular objection to the present system is that in its present form, Ghana's decentralized local government system is grossly inappropriate foundation for the multi-party democratic political system that we are currently operating in the country. The framers of Ghana's current constitution picked a local government system
designed for a military regime and incorporated it wholesale into the multi-party democratic system without change or modification. What we have as a nation, therefore, is a political superstructure which is a multi-party democratic political system superimposed on a non-party substructure in which the elements of democracy, such as accountability, participation, and inclusiveness, are plainly missing or weak. The second major objection has to do with the exclusion of political parties from participation in the district level elections, which is a clear case of political exclusion and lack of inclusiveness in district level democracy. But there is a third objection, according to which a candidate shall present himself as an individual in a district level election and not to use any symbol associated with any political party. Secondly, a political party shall not endorse, sponsor, or in any way campaign for or against a candidate in the district assembly elections and that of any of its substructures. Now, let us the third objection feature in Article 42 of the Constitution concerns the 30% of assembly members appointed by the president. In practice, it is not the president himself who does this, it is done by the Minister for Local Government on behalf of the president. So, three main objections. One, the fact that the district chief executive is appointed without the involvement of the people living in the district. Two, the fact that political parties are not allowed to participate. And three, the fact that after all these, the president then is allowed of the members of the assembly. In terms of the need for protecting resources to the assembly and furthering local development, Ghana is a unitary state. The central government gives resources on the district so that the president can protect the resources transferred from central government to the localities. But the heart of the matter is that they weaken accountability to the local people. Chief executives have come to believe that they are primarily accountable to the president who appointed them and not to the local people. Furthermore, though political parties are banned from contesting these local elections, the president always appoints the DC from the ruling party and appoints the 30% also from the ruling party. Other parties are excluded from contesting for the position of DC, and other parties cannot have their members appointed as government appointees. Parliamentary elections will be significantly reduced if other parties have control of the metropolitan governments. Tension should not go away just because we introduce this tension would minimize. The nation would have provided, if we did that, the nation would have provided a political safety valve and additional political mechanism for reducing the high levels of tension associated with our parliamentary and presidential elections. In other words, if we allow political parties to enter these level elections, tension in the national elections will go down considerably. Inclusiveness and accountability will be greatly enhanced because no party will be excluded and chief executives will be directly accountable to people in the districts. The renewal of the chief executive's mandate will be directly dependent on the people's voting power, and no party will be left out in the competition for control of the districts. Ghana's democracy will take a crucial giant step forward. This level development will also take a big leap forward as parties compete to bring more development to the districts under their control, with the prospect that this will help them win the next presidential election. The benefits of a competitive party-based local government are endless. Another major issue that we should look at in our present local government system is the huge voter apathy that has been recorded from election to election. And I'm happy Dr. Emmanuel Akwete spoke about this. The average turnout in the district elections is about 40%, whereas in the national elections, over 80%. The truth of the matter is that turnout at this level is so low because the political party, which is the crucial mechanism for mobilizing voters to the polls, is absent. There's nobody there to mobilize the voters, there's nobody there to raise the issues, there's nobody there to raise the debate. And that is why local government elections have this very low turnout. Now, in recognition of this and other major challenges in our present local government system, IDEG is proposing to fellow countrymen, but especially political parties, MPs, government, and civil society organizations alike, a new reformed local government system with the following characteristics. I'll be there in less than 2 minutes. One, the new reformed local government system that we are proposing will have an elected chief executive directly elected by the people and on the ticket of the party. Two, district level elections should be open to political parties. Three, election, all members of the assembly should be elected. This presupposes the abolition of the system of government appointees. Four, the proportional representation should be introduced to ensure that women's participation in the representation of minorities is increased. Five, the common fund, which is the grant that the central government gives to the assemblies, should be raised to not less than 15% of tax revenue. Our view, IDEG-CFI, is that these proposals would enhance election peace in this country, improve accountability, and end exclusion, raise inclusiveness in our democracy. We therefore call on fellow Ghanaians to rally around this idea and bring that will bring transformational change to lift our democracy forward. We think that allowing political parties to enter local government elections is an idea whose time has come. Thank you.
He deserves another round of applause. Thank you very much. That's Dr. Jonah trying to summarize his thoughts, and that's not easy. I have a question. All finished. Proportional representation and local government reform. Something that out. We have our next speaker who actually shocked me by asking for you. And I was thinking, wow, this person looks so South African. He's asking Dr. Pipi, where is my water? Miss you. His name is Dr. Matthew. Am I right? Okay. Let me just go to Matthew. I will learn it as I get along. And I hear he's been in Ghana several times. I'm privileged to visit for the first time, but his name is not unknown. Dr. Matthew was Chief Executive Officer of the African Institute of South Africa, a research institute specializing on African affairs from September 2007 till 2012. Among the several official roles he has held, Dr. Maklu was Deputy Director General of Tourism in the South African Department of Environmental Affairs and Tourism from 2000 to 2007. And from 1997 to 2000, he was the Chief Director for Migration in the Department of Home Affairs. And as he was sitting with the other speaker who comes from Kenya, we started accusing each other of okay, I won't talk about that. Why we need visas to enter our own countries. And Dr. Martin said he tried to change it, but he couldn't. He had to explain himself and so forth. He has additionally served as a political advisor and university lecturer and in the office of the United Nations High Commission for Refugees in Kenya. A citizen of South Africa, Dr. Matthew's professional life has been greatly influenced by his own life experiences as an exile traversing Southern, Eastern, West Africa, and England. He's traveled extensively in Africa, having visited 28 countries. His PhD, which he completed in 1992 at the University of Essex, focused on Botswana's refugee policies and is an example of his academic and professional focus on forced migration and refugee issues. In 2012, he completed a PPhil in knowledge management at the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa. Dr. Matthew's areas of specialization are migration, tourism, leadership, public policy, analysis and implementation, regional integration, and knowledge management. He presently works independently as a management consultant, and we're very pleased to have him do his 15 minutes on what it looks like in South Africa. Thank
you. Check this one.
Mesdames et it's great to be back in Ghana that time this year. Went to school here, was at Aquinas, my secondary school. I was a gone presbyter, also a graduate from the University of Ghana, BA Political Science with Geography. So Dr. Jonah were in company. I think Dr. Peter. I think this topic for me is an interesting one, and when we talk about the South African experience, I think if I was, I hope not to do the PowerPoint presentation, but what I've done is speak about the journey from rule by law to rule of law. The South African experience is one where we had the most brutal form of colonization, exploitation, and dominance by a white minority over the black majority going back centuries. I'm going to not use the slides, but as they run, you will see how far back I go in history in the South African case, and make the point about migration and the implementation of systems in which the indigenous people of South Africa, the Khoisan, have increasingly found themselves dominated by African migrants in the beginning, and people, students of archaeology and others would say we, the Bantu people of South Africa, would actually have migrated from around Cameroon, Nigeria, all the way going down. But I think that importantly, in terms of the history of South Africa, and many people would start with 1652, but some of us say you've got to go back to understand that there were people before that. When Van Riebeck, on behalf of the Dutch East India Company, comes down and starts up the settlement, there have been people there for thousands of years. But I think that the confluence of the history of the indigenous people of South Africa and Europeans is one of conflict, is one of exploitation in the main, and is one of an imposition of a system in which the minority sought to take the benefits of the vast mineral and agricultural wealth of that country. And Esther Wood, one of the prime ministers of South Africa, said Africans should be but drawers of water and hewers of wood, and therefore, why should they be educated? They were there to serve their white counterparts. So basically, if you go through and just run the slides a bit faster, you see conflict. The imposition of the past laws all the way into the 19th century, where Africans were expected to carry passes, to move around, to be told where you could go to, where you could work. In the slide went a bit too fast. The important point that one wants to make is the discovery of diamonds and gold in South Africa in the 1860s, 1870s, which then brought into place a migrant labor system in which South Africa was the center and most of Southern Africa was the periphery, drawing in labor. In 1910, the British, after a number of wars with the Afrikaners, hand over the country through the Union of South Africa to the Afrikaners. And in 1913, there's the Land Act, in which 93% of the land of South Africa is taken and given to our white compatriots, and Africans, the majority, are given 7% of the most desolate part of the country, broken up into pieces. So you can see we started fighting for passes all the way back 1918. People know of Sharpeville in 1960, but see how far back in terms of breaking up of African families and control. And remember at this time, even as we talk about local government system, Africans didn't have, in terms of governance, the opportunities. I think Africans could vote until I think about 1936 or thereabout, mainly in the Western Cape. Group Areas Act, meaning that you could stay in a particular area based on your ethnicity. And I think running through this is the important point, rule by law, my apologies, of the white minority that the system of maximum exploitation of the resources. Let me just run the slides. I think, this slide basically puts into context what we then had to struggle against, and the reason why some of us grew up in Ghana, amongst other places, that our parents were involved in the liberation struggle, and that's why we're like that. But having said that, when you then get to 1994, 1990, liberation movements of Mandela released amongst others. The process of Odessa will become the talks for the formation of a new state then begin. And it is in this period that an interim constitution is created, and in 1996 then the constitution that we have right now, with the input of over 2 million South Africans, then comes into being. And in that constitution there is a number of areas where it lays out a number of principles related to, among others, local government. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. The Constitution lays out a number of principles. Amongst them, human dignity, the right to life, equality, non-racialism, non-sexism, supremacy of the Constitution and rule of law. So this Constitution moves the focus of the determination of what is law in South Africa away from Parliament to the Constitutional Court at the apex of the judicial system. Talks about accountability, constitutional democracy, good governance, and oversight. And importantly, Chapter 2 of the Constitution, my apologies that this is a bit on the small side, is the Bill of Rights. Now when you look at the South African Bill of Rights, in many places it talks about the rights of everyone. It's in very few places that it speaks about the rights of citizens. I think it's the one on citizenship, the issue around political rights, which is voting, and then the freedom of movement. It says everyone has freedom of movement, but citizens have the right to enter and remain in South Africa. So maybe the visa matter, and my colleague from Kenya is not here. So even as we dealt with visas, we were conscious that there was a distinction there. And I think there is the right to work, the right to lay Parliament to be constituted. Because we can't just speak about local government without the bigger context. So there's Parliament, 2 houses of Parliament is taken into account in terms of that system. Next slide. government, national, provincial, local. Cost to the record with. It's not like national government can impose. Constitution is very clear on the powers of different. This shows, is one of the 9 bodies which strengthen constitutional governance in South Africa, where there was a debate about the amount of money that had been spent on the president's private residence, and the parliament, amongst others, and the president was sanctioned in terms of parliament, not having done its work in terms of sanctioning the executive. So these are the court systems, these are the institutions supporting democracy, the Electoral Commission, Human Rights Commission, Auditor General, Public Protector Election. Public administration, again, clearly outlines what is expected of people in the public service. And later on, when we get another 15 minutes, we might deal with issues around the challenges, where you might have a good constitution, but I think the practice is what is important. I think when the chair talks about proportional representation and whether it necessarily automatically allows minorities, I thought I would agree with that. Now we're in the African continent, there was forms of government before colonialism. So we're saying that traditional systems of leadership also have to be taken into account, and quite often there's a conflict around determining, exactly which one is, is supreme. Obviously, we're called the constitution, but people have their culture as well. So how do you locate that, even as you deal with local government? And there are 3 provinces in South Africa of traditional leadership. They are not. There's not clear because there are urban areas in the name. It's very difficult. We come from different parts of East traditionally. Gauteng province, Northern and Western Cape. I'm giving you the background. This year is a very important one in terms of national government has to do in terms of local government. Let me know when I have 5 minutes so I can zoom in. But I'm sure the other study are probably most interested. That local government and account the necessity must determine the so that we are unique issues that you have in Nigeria and the United States. Municipal government can raise loans, and there is Section 139 of the Constitution which allows the province to intervene where a local municipality cannot deal with its own issues properly. Next slide. There are 3 kinds of municipalities in South Africa, 8 metros. You talked about 250,000. Mangaung, and a number of others. Category C, which is the district. The plane coming this way, I watched the film Selma the second time, where African Americans were struggling for the vote. And I think it's important, as you talk about voter apathy and a number of those issues, for people to recognize the importance and the sacrifice that people made for this vote. So people might just see it as making a cross. But the fundamental issues around this process of making a cross, because it's a matter of choice. You are determining what you want in terms of governance. And yes, the ANC has been dominant in the South African context, obviously as a liberation party of 104 years. And to a certain extent, it became complacent. People always vote for us. Mandela, is an icon, global icon, and so on and so forth. I think what the ANC failed to realize, and there was a lot of corruption, mismanagement, and a few other slides. Maybe just keep on running the slides, because we are known as the protest capital of the world. Our protests are very violent, and they're numerous. I mean, people ban schools, people ban clinics, and so on and so forth. And this is happening across the country, irrespective of what government, what party is in power. In South Africa, after 1994, there was a government of coalition, National Party, and the ANC in many cases, and then national party. In this election, the president and where he has his private home is ruled by the Inkatha Freedom Party. Cape Town, which has always, for a long time, had been under the DA, is under the DA. Johannesburg under the DA. Swane, which is the capital, under the DA. Together, those municipalities control the budget combined of 133 billion rands. Divide that by 4 for the Ghanaian cedi, divide by 15 if you want to think of the US dollar, 17 if you want to think of the euro. So that is a huge amount of petrol that the ANC has. People, and in this election, President Zuma had said before that the ANC would move until Jesus comes. And many people were saying to him, he's at the airport already. Please go and pick him up. The city of Nelson Mandela Bay is also under the opposition. So I call it the coalition of hot bedfellows in terms of what has happened in South Africa. The important point I want to leave with you is around, and this just shows you the protests happening in South Africa in terms of votes, in terms of local government. The important thing to remember is that with your votes, you can make change. I think, as they say, when Brexit happened, some British said, but did we really vote for this? That's one version of it. Some people ask in South Africa, but it's going to be an interesting next 5 years. Thank you.
Not sure we buy clapping, please. People buy votes, but we don't buy clapping. Thank you very much. Dr. Matthew, that's very insightful. I'm excited about what I'm hearing. Indeed, all bedfellows. It's still working somehow because they're controlling a lot of money. And it means they can also think about what they need at the base themselves. And so we'll quickly go on to Mr. Donald Mojeni. Right? Okay. Mr. Donald Mojeni has over 12 years experience in undertaking policy research and advocacy in mainly governance, human rights, public policy and development issues within highly reputed national and international organizations. He has managed multicultural teams of experts working in the field of policy, human rights, human security, social justice, development and governance. Mr. Mojeni has also worked closely with governments on policy issues, capacity development, economic governance, and CSO participation processes in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, including in fragile contexts. His professional experience exhibits a strong ability to work with a range of individuals and organizations and the capacity to competently engage in public policy advocacy and influencing on key issues and developments. He holds an MA in public administration and public policy from the University of York, as well as an MA in public policy with specialization in international public policy and decentralized governance from the School of International Public Policy, Central European University in Hungary, and an MA in community development and project management from the Egerton University in Kenya. Mr. Mojeni is currently a governance, development, public policy commentator, and social accountability advisor at World Vision UK. We are very pleased to have Mr. Mojeni from Kenya.
Still morning, right? Good morning. So when I listened to the position that IDEG is trying to push for, that's exactly what we have. Okay? So if you're trying to get those goals, I think the last slide you talked about, that's exactly what we achieved. Okay? And what you have is actually a result of Ghanaian privilege. Okay? You'd be interested to know that had we not experienced the 2006 2007-2008 violence. It was not going to be possible, or at least it would have taken much longer period to achieve the devolution reforms that I'm going to speak about. So it's nice to be here because right now for Kofi Annan and the initial visit by President Kufuor to Nairobi, I think would not speak of Kenya as it is today. Okay? So I'll share what our experience is, where we are, and also share, I think, some lessons that I think might be crucial in Ghana. So, the devolution or the clamor for devolution in Kenya has been highly divisive. Okay? I think since the 1970s, 1963, during Kenyatta 1, now we have Kenyatta 2. So during Kenyatta 2, there was what we call Majimbo. Majimbo was regionalism. Okay? And of course, that was crushed by Kenyatta 1 because he said, well, these regions after that were deceived. Okay? But come to the early 90s, after the reintroduction of multi-party politics in 1992, and in 1999, we start, piecemeal reforms. So whether this was the introduction, for example, of local governments through councillors. Okay? So the councillors would then get together within the assembly. In 1999 to 2010, we've had various piecemeal reforms to do with decentralization. Very radical constitutional, which might not, if many citizens did not support the devolution process that had been proposed. Okay? So it's the wider constitution that also includes aspects of devolution. So, but why did we devolve? What were some of the objects and principles of our devolution? I'll go through this quite quickly. Next slide, please. Mentally, to promote democratic accountability, the history of is such that, and in the coast, we don't feel part of the nation. In the coast, there's been a movement, which actually Kenya, where we border with Somalia, because of previous policies, they've been excluded. Okay? And if I went to the north, they would ask me, oh, how is Kenya? Okay? So when you talk about exclusion, it's deep and entrenched. Okay? So, next slide, please. In terms of some of the principles, okay, the broader principles of devolution. One is that the county governments are supposed to be based on democratic principles. Okay? But they must also have reliable revenue. Reliability in terms of we must know that come June we will get this money for sure. Okay? So you don't have to go knocking and begging from central government. But also the issue of 2/3 gender representation. So within the constitution of national government, but also county governments, there cannot be more than 2/3 of either gender. Okay? So the elements of gender representation. Now, what we're getting into is very ambitious, but also extremely risky. We have a popularly elected president who heads the national government, and then executive power within the 47 counties, which lies with a popularly elected county government. Nationally, we have a bicameral legislature with members of parliament forming the National Assembly and the Senate So the Senate exists largely to protect the interests of county government. So each county will elect one senator, okay? And then we have county legislatures that we call county assemblies, with members of county assemblies responsible for making laws, oversight, approving budgets at local level. We have minimum 15% of national revenue shared within the 47 counties. On top of this, we also have the equalization fund for some of those marginalized communities I talked about. And then there's a very clear delineation of functions. So there are functions that are exclusive to county governments and functions that are exclusive to national government. Security, foreign relations, and all are exclusive. There are also certain functions that are concurrent. Now, why I'm saying this is, we have 48 governments, okay? I want you to imagine this, but one nation, okay? So the two levels are distinct, okay? But they remain interdependent, but they're distinct. But they must conduct their relations on the basis of consultation and cooperation. This is to cure that initial fear that, you know, some of these counties would want to cede, you know, become independent nation states on their own. So if we move on, so these are some of the new structures that were introduced in red. This is the old, and then we have some of this that is in red. I mean, we had constitutional officers and commissions, but we've also had new ones added. But all the rest there is all new. So next slide, please. So this is the complexity, and the transformation is, this is the new structure, 47 counties, okay? Now, what we are trying to shrink, where's that pointer? So, from 8 provincial administrations, okay, 175 local authorities, and 210 deconcentrated administrations, 280 plus districts. Now, try and collapse all that into 47 counties. It's a very complex affair. To do that within 3 years, even more challenging. So, next slide, please. There have been various dynamics. One is you need to confront the center. Okay? Now, when we had the referendum on the new constitution in 2010, the current president and his deputy were not supportive. The president was lukewarm. The deputy president opposed. Okay? Officially opposed the new constitution. Now, they have to implement the transition between the old and the new. That was one of the dynamics. But also the risk of conflict. In Kenya, I mean, that's really problematic. Next slide. So, in terms of some of the impacts, let's just go through that. There has been significant effect on the balance of power, okay? Mainly between institutions, but not in ways that we expected. We'll talk about that once we have the conversation after this. But there is no doubt at all that we've created strong, powerful county governments that can act as a counterweight to the center. Okay? There is no doubt that we've succeeded in doing that. However, I mean, we've also replicated some of the bad of central government at local level. We'll look at that also when we move forward. Next slide. Now, we are a very ethnic country. There are 44 ethnic groups, around 7 of them are major. Now, The way the structure of devolution or the constitution, it did not significantly come up with measures that would reduce ethnicization of politics, okay? But the constitution recognizes issues of ethnic diversity and ethnic inclusion. However, of course, there are challenges to do with the tyranny of the majority, which is, of course, a democratic process, but the other constitutional provisions. So balancing between inclusion, ethnic diversity versus the more democratic process where the majority have their way. I think that's been a challenge. I mean, there's been over-representation of dominant ethnic groups within counties, skewed employment and all that is also taking place. So let's move on. Now, it's quite a challenge, I think, at this point, 3 years in, to say whether this has contributed to improve democracy. One, because, 3 minutes. One, because some of the participatory public management practices at local level, of existing elites and patronage. However, improvements on service delivery, okay? Which I talked about in the north, who were saying, well, you know, we are not part of Kenya. They are seeing roads for the first time since independence, okay? They are seeing health facilities. So service provision is coming closer. There are issues of wastage, corruption, inefficiency, duplication, and all. But again, as I would say, it's a ship we're building as we sail. There are also challenges of equity, obviously. Let's move on. So in terms of politics, I think it's tricky because you're now, especially for governors, who've had to play political games both at local and national level at the same time. So you need to manage local dynamics, your constituents, but also your relationship with the party and the national government, okay? So most county governors have been able to, you know, go for what is in the interest of the county, even though it is not consistent with the party position, okay? And the coalitions we talked about, it is possible in Kenya to forge a coalition for presidential elections, but when we go down, we say we are competitors. For the sake of the presidency, we coalesce, but when we go down to the local, we are competitors. But also the emergence of local elites and all, I think we'll talk about that later. Next slide, please. So, devolution, in conclusion, remains very popular. And this is very, very important. One, because it deters the national government from undermining the process, okay? But even most importantly for you, is it gives the political system, the multi-party political system, much more legitimacy, okay? But also what he talked about, many Kenyans who lost nationally, felt they won locally. So the most important thing really that I would point out is not the ability of the national government to interfere with centralization, but the ability of county level governments to push back. Okay, that's a very strong feature. Finally, next slide. Next final slide. I think some very important lessons for Ghana. I'll just go through them very fast. One, strong constitutional foundations for devolution or decentralization, whichever form you go for, will be important, with very strong safeguards for reversal. Okay, against reversal. And then start thinking about balancing between national coordination and control. Because I think in any devolution process, the center remains key. Political settlements, I mean, let's manage expectations from early on and communicate this openly. Let's be aware of some of these political economy dynamics, but the transitional process will be very critical. If, for example, we decide to go for a service delivery model, any interruptions in service delivery will elicit a course of re-centralization from citizens, okay? Not even from the center. And then let's learn to reform along the way. So I think we can talk more later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mokebi. Let's do another round of applause for him. Very, very, very interesting. Very interesting things I'm hearing. I have an interesting home, and one of my daughters says, I'm going to vote for this person whom I know is not going to win anyway, because I think if a number of us do that, then that person will grow stronger for the next election. And the one who supports one of the major political parties says, but that's a total waste of time. And the other one who supports the other major political party says, I don't usually agree with this one, but on this I'm saying that's a total waste of time. I run a very interesting home. I'm the only one who knows who might support. But that's the kind of conversation we have. And it tells you that the young people are thinking about how to shift power. They're serious about it, and they seem to be caught in a sort of a conundrum. What are we going to do to help shift power? What are we going to do to make sure that Trump will not take it all and take government where it belongs? Despite all the challenges. At this point in time, I have many questions, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to turn the questions over to you, the audience. I hear Professor Kumado is here. Prof, can I see you? I'm looking through the crowd for you. Oh, hello, Professor Kumado. He used to frighten us in first year constitutional law class. Oh my goodness. And if Professor Kumado is here, Professor Akila Pasoya is here, Mrs. Green Street is here, and all of those people are here. I know we have a very interesting conversation. So I don't know. I still want to give him the best shot because I don't know when next I'm going to give Professor Kumado. Prof, can I give you the best shot? I'm being biased here. The next round. Okay. Yes. And he's giving me permission so I can come to the rest of the crowd. Who wants to go? Who wants to rock the boat? Yes, sir. You may want to mention your name and where you're coming from. Yeah. Oh, they have to come and stand here. Okay. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the time given to me. And I want to thank especially the contributors, the panelists, for the insightful presentation. My name is Dr. Godwin Pamiete. I work with an NGO that works with farmers in the agribusiness. And you can see they are very small farm holders. Now, I want to leave this room with two questions answered, or one. And the first one is probably to my senior, Mr. John. You said many things, but one thing that strikes out is leading politicians and leading figures are crying for change. Now, I am of the school of thought which somehow argues that development as a process may be better if it follows a bottom-up approach. A lot of the violence we see and the death that is associated with change and elections is because of the attachment that the very poor have with certain characters in the political game. That is why the violence and the fact that we are now crying for peace. Will you please tell me whether what we are proposing in this room is one which is following a bottom-up approach? That is a process which is rather being coming from the poor rather than from the top? That is my first question. And the second one quickly is, you also talk on the winner takes all approach, which is a drain on the system, political system. My question is, democracy, as you rightly pointed out, is a very expensive game. And looking at the financial framework of these countries that have come to representations now, if the source of funding is not coming largely from anywhere, but from the political actors, wouldn't I feel very comfortable appointing somebody who is close to me and who has disclosed a large amount of money to help me win the campaign? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Lula, I have to come in. Do we have more questions for Dr. Lula? Or for the panelists, actually? Because I mentioned, yes. We'll have to.
Madam Chair, first of all, I think we should all commend IDEG for starting this conversation. It is long overdue. I also think that in the interest of Ghana, all of us must find ways and means of helping to eliminate this winner takes all. And I think this is IDEG's way of dealing with it. My question goes beyond that, because I believe that each and every one of us in this room will agree that until we change our political system, this winner takes all idea will not be overcome. But my fundamental question is this, that if we were to evolve local government as IDEG wants done, and as we all believe should be done, what will happen to the districts? In Ghana at the moment, with each district comes a member of parliament. When are we going to separate the districts from members of parliament? Are we waiting to start from 110 parliamentarians to 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 before we separate a district from a member of parliament? That's one of the questions I want to have answered. My second question, the second question is, how do we move this process forward? I know that IDEG has given us a few indications, but if we all leave this room and we think what has been discussed has already been accepted, I think we'll be making a very sad mistake. How are we going to get the political parties on board for each and every one of them to understand that this is in the interest of Ghana and not in the interest necessarily of any political party? Because all the political parties only go for what suits them. They make a lot of promises, and after the election, all the promises are forgotten. Thank you very much, IDEG, to Dr. Jonah, for bringing our participants and your dear self to come and start this conversation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Greenstreet. Can we take one last question for any of the panelists? And then, yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. When I listened to Dr. Jonah's presentation, sorry. My name is Yaro, and I'm the Administrator General of Presidential Justice. When I listened to Dr. Jonah's presentation, I also thought that in the presentation, the other presentation, a similar program will arise, but I'm getting a scenario in my head. And I thought if something like that will happen, and I'll see how it was resolved in the other countries. I saw a little bit of it in the Kenyan example, but I didn't see it in South Africa. I agree totally that we need to look at this winner takes all situation. But I also think that we need to look at it critically. Otherwise, we end up compounding the problem that we want to solve. Take it, for example, we agree that all political parties come on board using their manifestos. Now, let's assume that we have political party A, B. Political party A says that my manifesto, independence today. Political party B says independence in 2 years' time because my people are not ready for independence today. Now, this issue should go to a referendum. So now, we've had elections in the districts, the parties are taking their districts. Take a region, a western region, there are 32 districts. 10 districts, party A wins in 10 districts, party B wins in 12 districts. Now, party A happens to have won the national elections, and so they are on the presidency. Now, party A has just 10 districts elected on party in West. The team that lost the election has a 12 districts. Now, we have to vie to see, we have to campaign for independence now, and independence in 2 years' time. Now, I'm just imagining what would be the situation, the chaotic situation in the districts and this. For example, it can happen that in one region, a party might not win, party A might not win at all, and yet party A wants independence now. What is going to happen? Is it that the other districts belonging to party B in the whole region will be campaigning for independence in 2 years, while at the national level, the president is and his other team in the other districts are saying independence now. So I'm just imagining, even within the same region, you can have a district that has been carved out of one former district, so they are neighbors, sort of. But this district has, Party A has won in this district, Party B has won in this district, and they are campaigning for independence now or independence in 2 years' time. What's going to happen? How are we going to manage it to ensure that at the end of the day, we go to the referendum without any chaos? Because I can imagine that there was a little, but it wasn't so little. So if all that address the situation, we will come to the text.
Thank you very much.
The very first question talked about. I'm very sorry if I gave the front of the constitution. Majority of the people who appeared before this commission wanted the chief executive. So it is not a top-down thing. It is actually the people on the ground who are asking for it. So if I give the impression that's a purely elitist idea, it is not. Yeah. And then I think the second question had to do with whether or not, after they have introduced party politics into local government elections, which powerful people are not going to finance and then get their money back the same way they do at the national level. I mean, this is something that should not prevent us, even if it's going to happen. It should stop us. We cannot say that this is what happens at the national level. If you go to introduce democratic policies at this level, this will happen, so don't go. I think it's better to introduce a democratic revolution at this level and see how best we can deal with this problem. Already, there are so many suggestions regarding how we can stop the so-called money bags from exerting too much influence within the political parties. One of these solutions is public funding of political parties. Once we introduce the system to the local level, we will be able to find a way around it. Professor, thank you very much for your profuse commendation of
IDEG-CFI for this initiative. Your first question had to do with, I think, the conflict between the number of districts and number of constituencies. We have 275 constituencies and 260 districts. And so you have a situation where some of the districts have more than one MP. I don't know whether I understood the.
As we go along, the more districts we create, the more MPs we are going to have.
Yes. Okay. The truth of the matter is that there is currently before the Ghana Parliament what we call the Consolidated Local Government Bill, which is trying to stop this process of multiplying districts and therefore increasing the constituencies. The main reason why we had this problem in the past is that in this country, our constitution says constituencies may be created by the electoral commission, the districts, and the president. That one, the consolidated local government has to solve that problem. It is the electoral commission that is not going to be the source of the situation. So, if it is passed, our fears may be allayed. Now, how do we carry this process, the process of advocating for democratic devolution forward? Already, IDEG is doing it. 2014, we went around to Dakwete, Tenakoma, so many of us went around the entire country, region by region, conversing with people. We know that you want to change. How do you do it? This election year, we have decided once again to go around. We have spoken with very many middle class associations, bar associations, engineers, medical association, all of them. But this year, election year, we are going to talk to the people that we know that everybody is very much engaged with this election. But after the election, let us know that no road, no food, no water. IDEG is saying that reform the broadcast system. We are not decisions now. The last question, session, power to the districts. Now, unfortunately, the supporters of the present system, they have played on similar fields. If you read the literature, Ghana is a unitary state, therefore, to be very, very frank with you, our constitution says that we are a unitary state. So whatever devolution we do will be within the framework of a unitary constitution. Nobody is thinking about a federation of states at this stage in this country. So the assumption is that to the extent that we have a unitary state, let us devolve power as much as possible in order to enhance democracy and development. I don't think the Constitution allows secession. So this is what, I don't think fun.
I think importantly for us in South Africa is the point that we started with around the rule of law. For us, the Constitution is of utmost importance, and there are very strong checks and balances about just changing our Constitution. There was a big debate about the death penalty in South Africa. And if you had asked the majority of people, because of crime among other things, many people would say we should introduce the death penalty. But then this then has to go to the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court was very clear. It's, when you look at those bills, the Bill of Rights that we put up on the screen, there are certain rights which cannot be abrogated. And one of those is that of life. And once you've taken life, if you have made a mistake, like they're seeing a lot of in the United States, it's a major problem. So I think that we also have recognized that you've got to keep government on its toes. And so those 9 bodies we spoke about, the Public Protector, Electoral Commission and others, are bodies that support the democratic process. And the media is strong, civil society is also very strong. These are institutions that you would require in order, whether you go the IDEG way, whatever way you go, to try and ensure that power is not unfettered. I get the impression that to a certain extent, when you speak about your political parties, it's almost like when one is in power, then you are able to change certain things. In South Africa, even though the ANC is the majority, and if it did not change the constitution in 1994, when it had over 70% of support, it can't do that now, because it needs 75%. And the constitutional court must rule. So I think we are recognizing, and as the president saw on the 31st of March, Section 9 of the Constitution on equality includes him as well. I think that's important. Now, the issue that was raised by the administrator of the presidential estate is a factor of democracy. I mean, the conundrum that you put forward would be resolved by what the majority vote is in that particular case. I think the election in South Africa has just shown that as well, that irrespective of the spaghetti bowl that you have, life has to go on. Mayors have been put into power, the program of work has to go. And I think the interesting thing about the South African case as well is that competition allows you to see. So we could compare the different political parties, the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape in the main, one province, the one big metro, with the rest of the country, which was largely in the hands of the ANC. As we showed with those slides on civil society protests, these happen all over the country, but when you add them up, most of those are happening in ANC-controlled areas. So, well, what is going to be interesting is that the DA with its allies have now taken over the big headaches to a certain extent. We're going to see what's going to happen. And with the ANC being in opposition, it might make the situation difficult for the DA. But that's part of what the name of the game is. I think that South Africans have also become very, people who have now, go to court very easily. They have discovered the power of the court system. So we litigate on almost everything. But that is also expensive. It requires resources. So the poor, in a sense, the usefulness of civil society is that other people can litigate on behalf of the poor, friends of the court, friends in a particular case. So a lot of those kinds of litigation are coming up, and they have ruled against government that the Constitution is very clear: the right to a clean environment, the right to health, the right to housing. But the courts have said within means, So again, those rights we recognize that will require. So I think constitutionalism becomes a very important process that we have learned. And allow me to just end. I see 2 of my former classmates have walked into the room, and I told them a joke on Saturday night that there were these 2 people who, and Jonah, because you gave a joke, the audience must rule. The audience must rule which one is funnier. So there were these 2 guys, and it's apparently a joke in Ghana. There were these 2 guys who went for an interview, and one was literate, the other was not. So they agreed that the one was literate to go first and have the other. So as when was Ghana's independence? And this guy said it's supposed to be 1956, but for some reasons it had to happen in 1957. The second question was, who led the struggle for Ghana's independence? They said many, but Kwame Nkrumah finalized it. And then they said, the last one, is there life on Mars? And this guy then said, well, look, many believe so, but there's not scientifically proof. So the second guy then had to go in. They said, where were you born? And he said, it was supposed to be 1956, but then it was moved to 1957. And then the second one, who is your father? There's many participated. And Kwame Nkrumah finalized it. And then the interview said, you sound crazy to me. That, well, many believe so, but there's not scientific. So please, the case of Kenya and South Africa are our cases of our madness. If you have your madness, we hope that you will stop
Okay. So, I shall not attempt to translate. Now, I'll respond very quickly to two questions. Three. The county government, for example, is involved in massive corruption. Okay? That's really using the democratic process to prevent that. Now, on the first question on whether the process is bottom up or not, I think having worked with a few a highly political process, okay? At certain discussion, it becomes only one party. There are many, okay? But also, there will be so many competing, depending on who wins and who loses, okay? So try and see at what time are we mobilizing. Appointment, I think what we've seen, there's quite a lot of democratic, multi-party processes at local level leading to corruption, okay? But that's just one side of the narrative, okay? There is what I would call local notables or local elites who emerge, and some of them emerge as forces of good, okay? There is the emergence of local civil society organizations, okay? There is the emergence of local political party players, very influential, okay? Who are able to push back, for example, during nominations, what we saw in Kenya. The center of political parties, okay, was trying to impose candidates against county governments. But these local elites okay, pushed back and said, well, within this county, this is our choice as the county, as the party within the county. Therefore, leave that as our own playing field, determine what is happening nationally. And on how do we move this process forward, I think we need to create that window, that legislative or constitutional moment where we can pass or start to put these issues in the agenda. I do not know to what extent the issue of devolution or decentralization in Ghana is viewed as a problem. Okay? I think that needs to come out well. But the solutions as well, because we need to know what is it we're proposing, and I think part of that John shared, and try and merge those three with politics so that we can create that small window where we can start discussing the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll still go on with the next round. I have still a burning question because in Kenya and in South Africa, I seem to think that some proportional representation is going on there. But I found with the Kenyan side that all the county mayors, are they mayors or governors? Governors are males. I know South Africa has done a lot of proportional representation. But how do we tease that out into devolution at the local government system that's multi-party based? What difference will it make to women and to persons with disability? I still want to tease that out of this. We are going to talk about participation and inclusion. So we'll come to our next one. That will be the first question to all three of you. I have some hands up. Number one, and the lady over there, Major General Coleman, who is head of the CFI. Oh, Professor Kadu. will be the fourth. Then we'll have the last one before we go on. We still have a little time. That's okay. Yes, sir. Should we bring you the mic? He has to come here. Okay, so for, yeah. Thank you.
My name is Lawrence Mante, and then my question will go to Professor Jonah. Yes, please. It seems you emphasize much on electing the assembly officers on the tickets of political party. But my question is, I want to know whether you leave a room for people who stand independent, whether independent people to campaigns. And then also, second, when those people have been elected by political parties, in case there is an issue of misconduct, how will it be addressed? Can the party in power sack the officer who has misconducted himself, or maybe the political party elected them has to do so? That's the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes.
My name is Civic. My thing is not a question, but I think it's a communication. This thing is going to go through a reform, and we are advocating for the affirmative action law to be passed. I felt it was silent in the recommendation Dr. Jonah gave. Yes, there was mention of inclusion, but we need the 40% put in there so that it would fall the easy to make sure that it's being implemented. If it is silent, it's always like the usual thing we are seeing now. Thank you.
Does the third person, arrangements are not very age-friendly.
Well, thank you very much, Dina. Mine is also not a question. It's a contribution to the question raised by Professor Greenstreet. Where are we going from here when we have finished it? In answering that question, my good friend Dr. Jonah forgot to mention that a lot of work has been done, but it is contingent on us getting a buy-in from all the political parties to take the process forward. A window of opportunity was created when the constitutional review process was put in place. Where is that process? We need to get the politicians to take it and revive that process. If we get a buy-in, we say something like this: after the election, we are going to be committed to moving the constitutional review process forward. It is only then that all these suggestions that we are making can find a place to move us forward. So I thought I should add that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's very, very important. Professor Kumalo comes next, and then we'll get some response from our speakers, and then another round of game.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of very quick. First time IDEG was starting what we call second division, and to suggest that we should not be more ambitious than that. Just keep it as a conversation for now, because many good initiatives for our country that we destroyed by starting to count the results before the voting has taken place. Second, to suggest that IDEG should be very clear what that conversation is going to be about. From the comments and contributions, so many things have been put together. Many remember that when Professor Mills was going to appoint the Constitutional Review Commission, I wrote a small letter to him that he was going to waste our funds, that he should give me the money to do a project in every village. I was laughed at. Now people are asking, where is the process after so many? And then I was telling my students when I had they were to have elections in November 7th, that there was something wrong with the electoral commission. It won't happen. We should start preparing for this. And I said, yes, we want. I said, they haven't even done their work. They haven't got the constitutional process completed. What happens if at the end, how many presidents because of the dynamics? That's what has happened. So I would suggest that you are very clear. If you want us to do local government elections through the political parties in Europe, let the conversation be about that. And we will not be worrying about 10 districts in the out of 22 voting one way or voting the other way. And by the way, I get the impression that because we are not being very clear with our concepts, there's too much confusion. When the new local government system was introduced, it had 3 objectives: decentralization, democratization, and district expansion. Devolution was supposed to be part of the decentralization process. There's a rule book which spells these things out. Many have come to the table now without the origins and blame the designers for designing what they set out to design. And I hear so much talk about multi-party democracy. My business is to look into our constitution. I've never found that expression, multi-party democracy. What I find is a constitution which brings space for the pluralist political environment. How that got hijacked by political parties to become a multi-party system is something I'm still grappling with. And you can see there are many things we can contribute to that conversation. So let me stop here. Just thank IDEG for starting this conversation. And to see my old friend, the Lambofu, he's still conducting interviews. When I was chairman of the Media Commission, he interviewed me, and it was an interesting conversation. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Prof. Now you can understand why we were scared of him when we were in first year. He will blast every theory out into outer space. Can't challenge it. But it's good. This is a conversation that needs to be had, and we're having it. So I'll have my commentators and speakers also make their comments, and then we'll have the third round. We still have a little time to go. Yes. That's okay. Yes, so we want to start.
So let's respond to the first question on gender or affirmative action. I think it's connected to what we also asked. I think the Kenyan system empowers political parties to come up with party lists, okay? And these party lists are submitted to the Electoral Commission ahead of the elections, okay? So within the county assemblies at local level, if a certain threshold of representation is not achieved, the Electoral Commission then reverts to the political party list that fills that. Okay? So, and I'm talking of either gender because we have the 2/3 rule. Okay? But also, when we look at the National Assembly and the Senate, the national, when we get into elections, we actually do a 6-piece election. So here you will differentiate between national and local elections. So we do 6 votes on one day. So presidential, senatorial, member of parliament, the governor, member of the county assembly. Okay, so that's 6. Now, there is also a special seat that I haven't mentioned to make it 6 of a woman's representative. Okay, from each of the 47 counties, you have to elect one female, obviously female woman representative who will be sitting within the National Assembly. Okay, so there are various provisions within the electoral laws, but also within the Constitution that make it mandatory that any institution, any public institution, and interestingly, that has also now turned to private entities and NGOs, that you must be able to demonstrate that inclusion, 2/3, including women and people with disabilities. Thank you.
I started off by saying that there were so many laws in the room. I want to thank Professor Kumado for his very timely advice. I think all the points he raised are very, very important to take into account. But I think of all the questions, the one that keeps popping up, not just here, but wherever you have gone around, is also the question of women's representation in district level elections. You will recall that we proposed that the proportional representation be introduced at that level. And one of the main reasons for this behind this proposal is to get enough women. At the moment, only 7% of assembly members are women. Now, when we adopt elected, but when we introduce the proportional representation, this can go all the way to minimum 50%. This is because you can then require of political parties that on your list, for every one woman, a male candidate, there must be a female candidate. So it produces a list. If it is 30-member assembly, 50-member assembly, for every one male candidate, one female candidate. We can do the same for other minorities such as PWDs. You can say there must be minimum 5% PWDs on the list. This way, you will be able to produce a lot more assembly. In fact, you can even have more women elected assembly members than if we adopted the priority system that we adopted at national level. So it is not that we have forgotten about women's representation altogether. The main reason why we insist on the PR system is to ensure that we have enough women in the assembly. So those of you who support us because the idea is good, we want even more support because this is the only idea that will ensure more representation for women. Then there's the other question: what will happen to independent candidates if somebody doesn't want to join any party? When we started this idea, somebody, a very prominent Ghanaian, told us, yeah, your idea of proportional representation is good, but you can look for a mixed system. A mixed system means it should be possible to elect some of the people on proportional representation and elect others who do not want to go, so who have a dual system. And in fact, he gave examples of many countries where the two systems run concurrently. Okay, so at the moment, this is not what we are thinking about. But somebody has suggested to us before that use a mixed system that will enable people who are not interested in joining any political party also to a way of entering the assembly. So this can be considered. Now, the only other thing is to thank General Coleman for drawing my attention to all the other efforts that IDEG-CFI have been making to get this thing across to the rest of the country. Thank you.
Honorable not very sure. I suppose maybe Africa is behind, or maybe we shouldn't go that direction. But nowadays, when you have to tick for gender, it says male, female, other. So we must be careful. We must be careful when we must be careful. We must be careful to assume. People identify on gender, and you would know the challenges South Africa has had even at the Olympics on this matter. So there's a whole debate, where do we stop? It's almost where do we stop on this one. But let me just take a few issues. Proportional representation is not a panacea itself. It's a system, but there are many other variables you have to take into account. The issue of patriarchy, complaints from females about, when, the issues around motherhood and all the constraints which makes them not go into politics, including the roughness of the game, the insult to the person, many other variables which, even if you said 40% or you put a figure, it doesn't mean it will be there. South Africa, the female representation keeps on going down. There's also urban, rural issues, elite issues as well. So you've got to take number 10, internal dynamics of parties, and whether parties are themselves democratic. So the issue that you raised, Donald, about party, in the ANC or in the last election, most of the people who died were ANC members because people were fighting about the fact that you should not have been there, or the community said you want this person because of the huge budgets I spoke about and raising of people's lives. I think there's many other variables we must take a look at. The electoral system is just one variable to take into connection. There was a specific question about how you deal with misconduct of independent candidates. The issue is not whether you are an independent candidate or a party candidate. If you misbehave, then surely the law must take its course. And I don't think it would be the head of state or the head of another political party. If you see the South African situation, members of parliament are going to form committees to debate conduct in parliament, and whether you can wear overalls or workers' hats. Again, we say the constitution is very clear about dressing. As long as you are not naked, and then in parliament, surely you should be allowed to wear what you want to wear, and including overalls. Other people wear suits, so we should be complaining about those suits also. I want to throw in a Pan-Africanist view on this matter, since we are discussing 3 countries, and ask the question as to, much as we talk about uniting this continent, quite often when we deal with issues, we deal with them very much, this is Ghana, this is South Africa, this is Kenya. So the question that we have to be asking ourselves as Africans is, in terms of the democratic process that we have on the continent, what really must work for the continent with our own idiosyncrasies and so on and so forth. Is it the case when we look at a country like South Sudan, which has become independent, which has gone back into conflict? So I think it's important also that we must reflect on these issues, so that whether one is Ghanaian or not, one then we say, in relation to the issue that I will put on the table in Ghana, what are the issues? But for me, even if we debate these issues, as I went jogging this morning and I see open gutters, and it happened to rain, and the open gutters are full, and if I fell in there, and I sue the chief executive officer for in terms of the rights that I'm, for me, that constitutions are important, but the implementation is even more important. I think that, whether you look at Boy Ibrahim or the UN Human Development Index and many others, we praise ourselves when we see ourselves at the high end. When it comes to real democracy, well, and Dr. Akwete, we were together in Rwanda in December, and part of what they did was to take us around to some of their constituencies to look at the democratization process. So that yes, we can debate whether Kagame should go for third term, but whether when you are in Rwanda, do you feel, that you are safe? I felt safer in Rwanda than in South Africa. In Rwanda, you get to the airport, you move all plastic, very orderly city, cleaner. Yes, so there is this debate about rights. Do we bring the political rights first the West is very much interested in all the economic rights. So for me, those issues I think need a debate as well. How are you sharing wealth in Ghana? I mean, when we were in Legon, this was all bush here in Eastern, but we now see huge buildings. Are these buildings a reflection of the democratic process when people go hungry, people are begging, food is wasted? No, I think the debate must also begin to look at so-called liberal democracy as against total democracy. When our wealth is taken by the West and others, in terms of this rich continent with its minerals, where are we? Are we concerned when people die in the DR Congo? So we should take Africa as a human body. If your hand is hurting, then the body can be totally different. So I think we must bring Pan-African spirit also to these issues. As we debate them in Ghana, let's debate them across the continent as well. And maybe the visa issue, we'll debate the visa issue.
Thank you very much, as speakers. We have a little time left, so we have a few more comments, and then quickly, I love Take Africa as a human. When you're handset. Yes, can we have one person at the back? We'll have we'll have the gentleman at the back. Okay, I wanted Dr. Fair to comment when we have to wrap up some of the narrative conversation at the last refreshment. Is that okay?
My name is Park. I work with Classic. Mr. Jonah, I have heard many argue that rather electing the MDCs would be a recipe for corruption in the sense that they will have to campaign, during campaign, which use a lot of resources. So if they are able to get into power, of course, they'll use that announcement for themselves. Again, they further advance the argument by saying if the elected individual doesn't belong to a political party, he might be a wrong against the political party because political parties in this country are extremely suspicious of one another. And so when it comes to implementation of policies, probably he might disagree. And again, isn't that going to burden a national purpose? Because already we know that this year's election, Parliament didn't approve what the Election Commission put together for this year's election. So I want to know how we can reconcile the two, because they're all here in the interest of the country. So with this position by others, what should be all responsibilities now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. He or she might disagree. Okay. Who is my next? Yes.
My name is Kobe Mensa, investor at Nada Business School and a member of the technical team. It goes back to the question about, regionalization, for example. If maybe one district wants to go the particular way and the other district would go the particular way. I think when it comes to evolution, this is no longer a hypothetical issue, because even when we look at Brexit, Scotland voted 62-48, Wales 52-47, and England 52-48. Yet, because the decision of regionalization is centered, of course, the Scottish will complain, but still the dominance, the majority decision actually holds. So one of the clarity, as Kumar actually talked about, that we are trying to see is to look at the mandates and then the public services and see which one is actually at the center, which one actually could be brought. Once we have clarity on some of these issues, will actually be ironed out by the document. So we don't have to actually guess and actually talk about what happens in the situation. Thank you.
Very much.
Just a comment as well. I think the panel has been extraordinary. Just a quick comment. And I think it has come to me because of the story, doing the work and going around.
we need somehow to agree when we finish talking. And I think you made a good point about the we call it deliberation. That at some point, at what point do we just go ahead and do something? And at what point do we continue to talk about it? And I think that's why General made this point that this is a discussion that has actually been going on for a while. I realize my colleague from Kenya, you asked the question, how much do Ghanaians? It's been going on for quite a while, the issue about electing DCs. I mean, the concept of calling it democratic revolution might be new. But the issue has been out there for a while. You know, there's been a constitutional review commission, there's been, and you made a very good point. Things are somewhere. You need to just continue from where things are. But somehow, we tend to start everything all over again. I would not be surprised if next year we have a discussion and it's about can we now explain what it is. So yes, there is some work to be done, it's obvious. And I think IDEG has been wonderful in beginning it. And I just feel as a media person, I say to my colleagues, this is a subject that we must focus on. It just has to become a matter of interest and there must be quite a bit of public education. See, somehow there's a lot people are much smarter than we think. And we tend not to give people credit. We always talk about political parties and so on. But frankly, the party that's not listening to the people is nothing. The real thing is the people, not the parties. So somehow we need to find a way to get people, ordinary people, or Ghanaians to understand the value of something. I think when people understand the value of something, they fight for it. I don't know, it's a little difficult still because it seems like a novel concept. And even listening to the questions, you can see a bit of apprehension. That question people keep coming up. Believe me, even when you answer it, they ask it. You know, that, are you sure this is not going to create a problem? So somehow, I mean, one has to find a way to sort of conclude it, to engage the people, get it to a point where we can say, oh, what is the way forward? So if the way forward is that we require a constitutional amendment, I mean, there's been discussion in Ghana about constitutional amendment actually sitting somewhere at the moment. So can we sort of take it from that point and then leave it to its logical conclusion? Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Can I have Dr. Kwaji because of experience? Yes, know how here.
Thank you very much. I wasn't going to say anything because there was so much I wanted to say. So I thought it would be wise just to keep quiet. In response to David and in agreement with some of what the earlier speakers have said, let me follow procedure and take a religious position that there was a young religious leader, you call him a minister, pastor, an imam, or whatever, who was sent to a congregation. So the first sermon was wonderful. Repent, something, something, something. The second week, he preached the exact same sermon. The third week, he preached the exact same sermon. The fourth week, he preached the exact same sermon. Then somebody asked an old man who knew him, you need to vary the sermon. So they asked, have the people changed? He said, no. He said, then I'm going to keep on preaching that sermon until they change. My point here is that I agree with Professor Kumari that we need to keep this as a conversation. Because that is what IDEG can do. That is what IDEG can do. But what I would like us to recognize is where we locate the conversations and who we are having these conversations with. You know, political parties, whatever, where we locate those conversations. Again, my wish list for IDEG is a consolidation of efforts. IDEG has been doing a lot of work in this constitutional review process. Something that didn't come up, but IDEG has done a lot of work in, is around the role of the chieftaincy institution in our local government arrangements. Because the picture is not a homogeneous or maybe a block. It's very, very nuanced, extremely nuanced. The location of power, how it's exercised, the relationship between the elite, and so on. So that I particularly like the lessons from our South African and Kenyan experiences. one, location in the constitutional foundations, and two, a solid political economy analysis to back this discussion that we're having. Because once you raise them, these questions are going to count. Another thing on my wish list for IDEG is that I want IDEG to be able to present to the Ghanaian people all of the different initiatives that are going on in and around decentralization, revolution, and democracy. There are a number of things going on in terms of, well, if you like tinkering, if you like incremental, rationalizing, whatever, call it. But there are many, many things going on. Dr. Jonah referred to the new consolidated local government bill. I was a bit sad, the sweeping treatment he gave it. But in that bill, even the way metropolitan and municipal assets are going to be characterized is different. It's going to be pegged as a proportion of the population, not 250, not 70, and all of those kinds of things. To take cognizance of the ways in which these are structured. Again, there are interesting proposals for differential treatments of different categories of assemblies. There are different sets of interests around the political issues as well as the administrative issues. I would want IDEG to take the lead in helping us to unpack this local governance bill because it's not through the third reading. I think it's virtually somewhere in Parliament, probably will be part of this. So it's going to become a fact of life. So we need to take that apart because the discussion we're having so far appears to think that if we introduce multi-partyism or pluralism in our local governance process, everything else will fall into place. The most solid argument for me today has been the potential it has for reducing tensions in our whole democratic exercise so that other people find expression at different levels of our governance. Now, Professor Akoy is just finishing a big piece of work around improving urban governance, metropolitan and municipal governance, and maybe IDEG can help to make this more widely understood. Very interesting proposals are made, some of which run counterintuitive to some of the things that I would have thought would be in there. And maybe we need to ask him to do that presentation. So, in conclusion, Terrain, I cannot do justice to what I've heard today. I deeply appreciate what the South African and Kenyan colleagues have brought on board. And the whole passion of mine is for the relationship between the different levels of governance to see themselves as interdependent and mutually accountable. So that localities can push back central government. And I really would like to see IDEG pick up the constitutional review discussion. As the National Development Plan Commission, we are worried about the fact that it's stalled because a lot of work went into it, and we need to move it forward. And we would welcome partners from everywhere to pick up this discussion and move it forward. Thank you very
I'm going to have final comments for my speakers. Please, the those
Sorry, one last thing. There's a very gender sensitive expression. I said assemblymen. Yes.
Okay. So my final comments. I think listening to the conversations today, and they've been very captivating. I have learned of your peers, okay, to be bold. I think one is that this process could lead to region seeding, but also that it could involve corruption, And these are narratives we've had for a very, very long time, working on issues of devolution. Okay? Now, what I can tell you, this needs to be a step of faith. Okay? You are never afraid of going to bed because of the fear of nightmares. Okay? So let's just move it. If you decide to take that path, let's not be afraid of the ifs, the ifs, the ifs. We'll have to build strong multi-party democracy over a period of time. There could be, we could fall short, could be a messy transition, but so long as we're committed to building that, I'm sure that can be achieved. I think we will need to continue talking. We'll need to continue having conversations, but it is very important that what we are talking about changes. Okay? So we might be talking about process now. At some point, let's talk about content, and thereafter, let us talk about implementation. Now, we've shared two examples from Kenya and South Africa, but we've also learned about the Ghanaian experience. Just some cautionary, I would like to look at this as a bridge. Okay? Now, the thing with bridges is there are not two bridges that are the same. Okay? They're all different. Okay? But we also know that a bridge is only as strong as its foundations. So the discussions you have now become very useful in the architecture of the vision or decentralization that you decide to adopt as a country. Now, once you've built a very strong bridge, we need to be extremely sure that that bridge is actually leading us to where we want to go. Okay? And at that time, let's also have that conversation. Is this taking us to the place we want to go? Strengthening multi-party politics and democracy. Thank you so much. Best wishes.
I think a lot of the contributions were simple comments, and so I don't need to, in particular, the Vincent's contribution, David's contribution, and then David's contribution. But there were specific questions. One, that if our proposals were accepted, it would lead to corruption. And then second, it will burden the election expenditure. Why? I don't understand. Already, look at this level elections are expensive. We are doing them. It's not going to be any different kind of election. All that we're going to do is to allow political parties to go in there. It will not increase this level election budget substantially. It will virtually the same money that we currently spend on that we're spending. The difference, political parties will be allowed in the PCs. So it is not going to increase. Then there's a question of corruption. That if our proposals were accepted and implemented, then there will be more corruption. Corruption is a problem in this country. We need to address them wherever they occur, whether they occur as a result of a proposal. But we cannot say that deprive the people of participation, don't promote accountability because of the corruption. Corruption is a problem, and as a nation, we need to find the solutions to those problems. Now, Manchester, your suggestions are accepted, and the gender is sensitivity. I'll go to confession. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, thanks very much. One or two things. I think that certainly from our side, in the South African context, and maybe I came with newspapers from South Africa on the plane. Maybe just the front page of the Saturday Star on Saturday would be to say that if we from South Africa are to take lessons from Ghana, it would be how we can be less violent in the South African case. Obviously, the history that I gave you explains a bit, but we have got to go over. I think violence in the system, and you will see it's gone even into Parliament now. As a reflection of what happened. I don't know whether they learned from a few other parliaments on the African continent. I know certainly, the Somali parliament, the Nigerian parliament, an example, or the Russian one outside the continental title. So that's one thing. The second thing would be, as IDEG continues the conversation, maybe Dr. Akwete, to say that recently in Namibia, there was a dialogue series under your good friend Bio at IDEG, the International Institute for Democratic Electoral Assistance, where we're looking at money and politics and the whole issue around the debate around corruption and how expensive democracy is and how it fuels corruption. It's a big debate over there. And one of the panels was on women and why they're marginalized in the political system. So maybe you want to have a conversation with Bio of idea running a system like that, possibly in the West African context, with the do it at the regional level. That would be something to look at. And then as an end process, that indeed, yes, I suppose, one of the things that Africans are supposed to do very well is to gather around the fireplace and engage in conversations. In Southern Africa, it's called the courtyard. But yes, implementation needs to happen at some level. And indeed, when Kenya started, we didn't know what the road would take them to. Neither did we, in the South African context, know where to take us. It has certainly not been a smooth road. It's a very, contested territory at different levels, but we need to go on. And maybe just one of the slides that I showed, which dealt with key challenges. Those are challenges that the National Development Planning Commission in South Africa had outlined, and where we must be getting towards 2030. We had outlined those challenges in 2011. I think maybe what we can learn from Ghana is to get out of our inertia in terms of implementing, because we say 2030, 5 years have gone, and we are still debating whether we should adopt the National Development Plan. So, in terms of lessons, I'm sure we could share that with yourselves to try and understand how you take that process. Let us be now go in.
Thank you very much to all three speakers and to everyone. Before I make my comments, I'm going to invite Dr. Akwete, who wants to give us an update on some of the processes that we have engaged in as IDEG-CFI.
Thank you very much. Quick ones, way forward. We would publish the presentations and the proceedings, the conversations, so that you see the public comments on what was said and all that. Yes, please, when it's ready. We'll do it soft and hard. Not all these soft copies. So. Two, I think for us, what we're talking about, discussions have gone on further. We've been looking at the content of the devolved system and how it would work. And the multi-party governance reform proposals, you cannot have the evolution keeping the parties as they are. You also have to look at how you use the law and probably some resources around state issues and reform even the electoral cycle to get parties moving more towards development and to begin dealing with the inequality issues in the society and so on. We've also talked about bureaucracy, the civil service, the public service. If you devolve and the president cannot appoint 216 chief executives, he needs an instrument for working, and it is the civil service that can engage parties and the president. Well, you're saying no now, but how do you transform that into the professional, impartial, merit-based institution? Now they're broken if you talk to them, and so on. So it's an integrated thing. We used to call them the triple report, but for this kind of conversation and in the election context, what we were excited by the fact that without formal conversation, the parties seem to be converging on the need to reform pro-democratic convolution, and we thought we should bring it up to encourage them to commit. So how do they commit? With the support of our partners, USA, UNDP, Star Ghana, we're going to IBES, we're going to the regions, we're doing the 10 regions again this September, and we're still going to talk about these things. We don't want to bring the content issues up a lot because we're looking at the political commitment and the idea. So that after elections, if we succeed in getting that commitment, then the work starts. And we are hoping that by 2020 we should get that done. And that makes the constitutional amendment process important. We are working with the Faculty of Law and they've done some work on how the situation, the constitutional amendment process does not collapse with the election, because there's a high risk that if nothing is done and you just fight, you do the elections and so on, it is not guaranteed that the next government will prioritize it. It becomes very a discretionary thing to do, but it's a national issue. A lot of work has been done and so on. So we are looking at how part of committing to the devolution would also be to commit to the continuation of the process and to find where the consensus is, so that a reform, something that will strengthen the system, can occur, whether it's the devolution alone or some of the things. The 97 proposals on the table, entrenched and non-entrenched, they've not built consensus on it in Parliament. They can't even talk about it. There's a real issue that the two parties are not moving on this. But how do we save the process? We are told that in the Constitution, I think in the directives, principles of state policy, 36 or so article, you see a government ought to continue with the projects of previous government, but it's not binding. And we think that the constitutional thing, they can play politics with it, unless we find a way of putting pressure on them that they're committed to continue this. So it's that. The third then is to see how, if you want to reform and also amend the constitution accordingly, you need peace and stability. How do we get that too? So that there's a certain political atmosphere generated by their actions before the elections, and then we can hold them accountable after. We're hoping that all this will culminate in a high-level national leaders coming together to talk about these issues before the elections, and we're still working on that. We think it's possible. We are incurable optimists, or incorrigible ones, and we think we may be able to get that coming. And we have our partners here. We haven't gone to them yet, but I hope we will find that support to do that. So this is what lies ahead of us, and we hope we have all your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peter. Let me acknowledge the media partners who have come. UTV, GTV, Southern, GBC Radio, Unity FM, Joy FM, Bassett 1, Metro TV, TV3, Joy News Channel 2, Exigency, Ghana, Star FM, that's doing the live broadcast, and Daily Traffic. We really thank you for your presence. They will be around for about 15 minutes after the event to engage our speakers. And so I hope that we have time for them to speak to that. We also want to appreciate the donors that supported this event and supported IDEG-CFI and USA, Star Ghana, IBES, and UNDP. Once again, thank you very much for your presence and for your continued support. We also want to stress that IDEG is coordinating CFI. The CFI, there's a number of groups in there. We have right from the Christian Council of Ghana to the Labour Representation representatives. We have a number of society organizations as well, and the National Student and we quite a number of huge civil society organizations that make up the CFI. which is coordinated by IDEG, and we've been at this for since 2008, and that's why I find this conversation interesting. The words are big. Ghanaians like big English, but it helps us to think. And as we think, we try to get somewhere with all the thinking. So we have location, regionalization, we have Pan-Africanist, we have all manner of words that were dropped in this very, very interesting conversation. But it's time to take the bull by the horns. I struggled, or I have been a prosecutor, and I am a counselor. Counseling means you're supporting somebody, but you're confronting them. Prosecution means I'm not coming after you until you committed a crime. It means holding two ends of a stick, the carrot and the stick. I think there's a place where we push from the carrot to the stick. And that's where I agree with my speakers that no matter what we're thinking, we know that certain things are not going well. Those things have to do with the amount of power that people and parties carry. The question is, how are we going to shift some of that power? And if it is about multi-party systems at the local government level, and that help, let's take the bull by the horns. If we still want to maintain the system where we have no multi-party kind of governance at the local government, then what else would work? What's the alternative? Let's take the bull by the horns. Conversations are sweet around the fireside, but mommy has to cook and the children have to eat. And that's the most important part of this whole thing. So I want to thank our speakers. They've done wonderfully well, sharing long histories with us, something you can do within a few minutes. But they've done well. Mr. Mogeni, thank you very much coming from Kenya. We'll still be tracking what you've been doing. Shall we do the round of applause? Dr. Matthew, who knows us very well, and can speak from about South Africa. Thank you very much for coming in. We hope you stay longer this time. And Dr. Tona, thank you very much for all the work that you've been doing in the background, producing all manner of research papers and so on and so forth. Dr. Pretty, thank you. You've been a model of a leader in civil society. We recognize your efforts. I know it doesn't seem a lot, and it's about Ghana. To the rest of you who have come here, all our professors, all our civil society actors, those from the government, those from the media, we really, really wish to thank you for your presence here. I happen to come with my husband, who is now with the UN mission in South Sudan. I don't want any trouble. I need to mention that you are here. He was district secretary and then became district chief executive and became member of parliament before getting to the UN. I don't know why he chose not to speak. It means I'm in trouble this evening because he's going to download all of it on me. So thank you very much once again, and let's go out and enjoy the rest of the day, continuing the conversation. God bless you. Some logistics announcements. Okay. Refreshments at the summer hat. Please stay and let's go.